What if everything you thought you knew about the Ten Commandments was wrong? What if these ancient sacred texts weren't actually called commandments at all? And this might sound unbelievable, but the truth is, the Bible never explicitly refers to them as the Ten Commandments. For centuries, we've been taught to see them as strict, unyielding laws. But what if they were originally meant to be something entirely different, something deeper, more profound, and even more mysterious? In the original Hebrew and Greek texts, they were referred to as something entirely different, something that could transform the way we understand these ancient principles. These weren't commandments, they were the 10 words. What does this change in language reveal? And why does it matter? Stick with us as we unravel a hidden truth that could reshape how we understand these foundational laws of faith. You may never see the 10 Commandments the same way again. Let's begin with a crucial detail that many might overlook: the original Hebrew text. When Moses descended from Mount Sinai carrying those 2 stone tablets, they were not called the 10 Commandments as many assume today. In Hebrew, they are referred to as Azeret Hadavarim, which translates directly to the 10 words. Not commandments, but words. This subtle difference carries significant weight. The Torah, the bedrock of both Judaism and Christianity, uses this term, and the shift in meaning is intriguing. Why were they called words and not commandments? The use of the word word instead of commandment is deliberate and profound. Words can be more than orders, they can be expressions, declarations, or even truths. They don't always demand obedience in the same way that commands do. In the ancient world, these 10 words were perceived as a covenant of mutual agreement between God and His people, outlining guiding principles for living rather than laying down strict, authoritarian rules. So when the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek, the term Decalogue was used, which also means 10 words. The Greek translators chose to preserve the original meaning, indicating a continuity in how these tablets were perceived across different cultures and time periods. This suggests that the words weren't meant as rigid laws, but as divine declarations meant to guide humanity. Now here comes the crucial question: why would the original text use words instead of commandments? Could it be that the nature of these instructions was intended to be more relational, more intimate than authoritative? This choice of wording leaves room for interpretation. It implies that these words were designed to shape the moral character of a community rather than to impose a harsh, unyielding set of laws. There's a stark contrast here between the idea of guiding principles and commands that demand absolute obedience. But what happened? How did we shift from calling them words to commandments? This shift in translation is key to understanding how modern interpretations have evolved. Let's move forward in time to examine the translations into Latin. The Latin Vulgate, one of the earliest and most influential translations of the Bible, maintained consistency with the Hebrew and Greek texts by using the term ditum verba, meaning 10 words. Even in Latin, the focus was still on these 10 divine utterances, reinforcing the idea that they were much more than just commands. This choice by early Christian translators shows that they still viewed these declarations through a nuanced lens, not as hard and fast laws, but as words to contemplate and live by. Fast forward to the 1500s, and we meet William Tyndale, one of the first individuals to translate the Bible into English. Interestingly, Tyndale didn't call them commandments either. He referred to them as the 10 verses, not commandments, further emphasizing that these were divine sayings, much like sacred poetry, meant for deep reflection and guidance. This idea takes us back to the original purpose of the 10-word spiritual guidance, rather than mere legal obligations. Here's the key point. Why did early translators stick to terms like words or verses instead of commandments? Could it be that they wanted to keep the focus on the theological depth of these words, emphasizing their spiritual, moral, and covenantal nature? Perhaps they believed these words were far too profound to be reduced to a list of rules. By maintaining this terminology, they preserved a certain theological viewpoint that stressed the relational aspect between God and His people. These weren't simply laws meant to be followed blindly. They were divine utterances, expressions of eternal truth designed to guide, inspire, and elevate human conduct. Let's dive into a true game changer, the King James Version Chave of the Bible. Known as one of the most influential and widely recognized English translations, the Chave introduced a profound shift that still resonates today. For the first time, the term 10 Commandments was used, marking a stark departure from all previous translations that referred to these divine decrees as 10 words or 10 verses. But why this sudden change? What led the Chave translators to choose commandments over the original term words? To answer that, we need to delve into the historical and political landscape of the early 17th century. The Chave was commissioned by King James I of England in 1604, during a time when the monarchy was fervently asserting its divine right to rule. The concept of commandments fits perfectly into a hierarchical system where commands are issued from above and must be obeyed without question. But this was not just any period. It was an era where the power of the king was closely tied to the will of God. Religious texts like the Bible were key tools in reinforcing this structure. So by labeling these divine decrees as commandments, the Chave translators weren't simply translating words, they were interpreting and framing these declarations in a way that demanded absolute obedience. But the question remains why? Why this shift from words to commandments? The answer lies in the larger political agenda. King James I was not just any ruler. He was a monarch who firmly believed in the divine right of kings, a doctrine that placed the king as God's appointed ruler on earth. His authority was therefore considered absolute and unquestionable. For the Chave to support this worldview, it was essential that the Bible reflect this model of top-down authority. The introduction of commandments did just that. It emphasized that authority flowed directly from God to the king, and from the king to his subjects. By changing words to commandments, the Chave enforced the notion that these were not suggestions or guidelines, but rather mandatory laws demanding unwavering compliance. So this wasn't merely a linguistic shift. It was a strategic rebranding that fit seamlessly into the social and religious fabric of the time. By framing these decrees as commandments, the Chave reinforced the notion that they were to be followed without question, solidifying the king's role as God's representative on earth. It was a brilliant move to ensure that subjects not only understood their place in the hierarchy but also accepted it as divinely ordained. The effects of this rebranding were far-reaching. The term 10 Commandments quickly became embedded in Christian teaching, shaping the way generations of believers have understood these ancient decrees. Instead of being seen as part of a covenantal relationship between God and His people, they transformed into a rigid list of rules to follow. This transformation was significant, as it altered not only how people practiced their faith, but also how they viewed their relationship with God. This shift brings us to an even more intriguing question: what other aspects of the Bible may have been similarly altered or rebranded to serve specific agendas? If the 10 words could be transformed into 10 commandments to fit the political needs of a monarchy, what other key concepts or terms might have been adapted over time to reflect the theological or political desires of those in power? Could it be that other parts of the Bible were also interpreted through the lens of control and obedience? Subtle yet profound change in language has had a lasting impact on how Christians worldwide perceive these divine decrees, and it opens the door to questioning how much of what we read today reflects the original intent and how much has been shaped by the needs of the powerful. This is a compelling question that encourages us to dig deeper into the history of biblical interpretation and translation. It's a reminder that translations of sacred texts are not just linguistic exercises, but are also influenced by the cultural, political, and religious contexts in which they are made. As we explore these ancient texts, it's worth considering what other elements might have been subtly reshaped to fit the prevailing ideologies of the time. In conclusion, the shift from the 10 words to the 10 commandments represents a profound transformation in the way these sacred texts have been understood over centuries. What began as guiding principles meant to nurture a covenantal relationship between God and His people slowly evolved into rigid laws emphasizing obedience and authority. This change was not merely a matter of translation, but a reflection of the political and theological landscapes of the time. The rebranding of these divine declarations raises a crucial question: how much of what we understand today has been shaped by the needs of those in power rather than the original intent of the Scriptures? This revelation should encourage us to look deeper into the text we've grown up with, to question the interpretations we've been given, and to seek a fuller understanding of these foundational principles of faith. The journey of exploring the past opens up new perspectives on how we live our spiritual lives today. If this video sparked your curiosity, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts on this thought-provoking topic. Your engagement means the world to us, and we look forward to diving into more eye-opening topics with you. See you in the next video. Stay curious and stay engaged.